Working.
Atlanta was good last week.
Yeah, we missed you, Les.
I had to go see the pandas.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody. And we do have a guest tonight, Van.
He's homeless.
He lives under the bridge.
I sent Leon a text. I said, "Hey, why am I homeless, man?" He said, "Because you're living under the bridge." I said, "Oh." So,
it's waterfront property. It's got to be.
Yeah.
That's actually a shot from the cloister, Amelia Island.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'll change it. I think I'll change it next time and just put my junky office as a background.
We were just welcoming you. That's all.
Yeah.
You like to give everybody a hard time.
Oh, I love it. Thank you.
What kind of photography do you do, Van?
So I do a little bit of everything. I just actually did a few headshots for the first time for a number of friends. So learning experience for me. I shoot with a Nikon. I've got a 7200 and a 7100. And so messed around with some lights and my backgrounds. And then I also did some studio stuff for a friend, I guess about a couple of weeks ago. And so that's it. But I do a little bit of everything. Just it's just like Leon. It's just fun for me. That's all. It's not. It doesn't pay my bills.
We all know about that, except for Robert.
Yeah.
Robert, are you awake?
Yeah. I'm here.
Just holding your head up tonight, huh?
No. I was just. I'm a little concerned about how this is going to go.
Uh-oh.
So are we.
Not me, Robert. I have faith.
Oh, I know it's going to go, and I know we're going to do a nice format tonight. Just that I'm not working on my computer. My computer went kaput.
Uh-oh.
It fell apart on Wednesday. So, and now I was going to do it on my laptop, but my laptop is not upgradable to the latest Lightroom. So I'm here in the studio doing it off of the TBCC's laptop. Yeah, I know that it's a little slow.
Yeah. Okay.
So that is my concern.
Well, we'll manage. You'll just have to speak slowly so that it has time for the program to catch up with you.
But it's only because it's a PC. That's why.
That's that darn PC. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not that it's a PC. It's because if it was a PC and it was my PC, it would be fast. Because I would tether it to the back of my Mac.
Oh, that was low. Yeah, but your Mac is the one that broke apart.
Yeah.
Okay, be quiet, people. These are my jokes.
We'll be here all week, folks.
Yeah, but it split apart. I had the screen. I have an iMac. And it's a 27-inch iMac, and the screen just, literally split apart. So I came in to do a class, and I found one part on the table and the other part on the chair. So
that makes no sense at all. How in the heck did that happen? It sounds like somebody bashed into it.
No. What had happened? Okay, let me do it in my Latin voice. What had happened was I had the hard drive changed to an SSD drive, and the guy that put it in, there's a tape that goes around the edging of the where the screen and the iMac come together, and that was not seated correctly. So I took it to a dealer type place, an iMac authorized place, and they put it together for me. And correctly, and everything worked really nice and fast. But afterwards, about a week later, it just fell apart, which means it wasn't seated well. And so I had to take it back, and they of course fixed it with no problem. But then that was in December, and so I came in on this Wednesday, and it was laying down. And I went, oh no. Oh, God. Oh my God. So it came apart again. And it was suggested to me that after I get it back this time to tape it up. and I have no problems with taping the corner edges because in the neighborhood I live in, you know, everything is taped.
That's what duct tape is for.
That's just duct tape.
Yeah,
Tape.
you know the neighborhood I live in. I'm surrounded by PCs.
PC.
Yeah, but none of them fell apart, I'll bet.
Here's your iPad.
Let's move on. Okay, let's get to announcements out of the way here. Please remember, if you have not renewed your membership, to go ahead and renew it on PayPal, on the website, and you have to use PayPal and fill out our submission, our information thing, so we have all your correct information, so we get you in our Google group. Don't forget about our store. There's a link on our second page of our website. Let me get in there and share. Let's see here. Here is our website, and if you go over here to the menu and click on that, we have the link here. Links for everything. The video meetings are all up to date, so everything up to last week is in there that we recorded. The competition assignments are right here with the explanations. The results for the competition are here. They're up to date. And the link for the store is right here. This really helps us we get 10% from each one of the sales, and that helps us pay for our speakers. So keep that in mind when you want a new hat or a new coffee cup or a new shirt like mine. Alrighty. Okay, the assignments for next month is going to be places of worship. If you want to look at that, it's right here. And all of these are listed right here. So places of worship, and there's a big explanation here. May is flowing water with an explanation here. It needs to be the primary subject. June is long exposure.
That's such old photography.
A half second, or longer. And then July is reflections. So keep those in mind. You can actually look ahead. We've got rainy days coming up, double exposure, capture motion, and automobile, truck, and motorcycle. These are all the upcoming assignments. So they're all right here on the web page, so that if you want to, if you're out shooting and you see something that might fit into one of these, remember that they're there, what we've got coming up. Tactical nights, obviously tonight we're talking about Lightroom. April, in light of the fact that we've got long exposure and double exposure coming up as assignments, we're going to have a technical night on long exposures and double exposures. So that'll be next month. In May, we're going to have a special speaker, Padma Ngova, who's a good friend of mine, and she is going to be talking about vertiramas. I'll be putting her information up on the website probably in the next week or so. And June, we are still trying to find somebody to fill in that spot, but hopefully I should have somebody shortly. We've just filled in all the other months. Mentioned before, Moose Peterson's going to be talking about wildlife photography. Colleen Muniak, who we had last year, is going to be coming back and speaking in in September. And I just booked Jerry Jones for October. She's going to be talking about glass refraction photography, where you see those glass bottles or glasses and stuff like that. They have water in them, and there's a pattern behind them, and it creates this pattern in the glasses. Really cool photography. She's going to do a talk on that for us in October. So we've got a lot of stuff on tap for technical nights, and hopefully everybody gets to participate in those. Don't forget about our upcoming, let me go back to the front page, and the April 25th, we're going to be meeting at Robinson Preserve. This is Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. We have, here's some of the pictures that I took there, stuff you could see, and I only went on a small portion of the park. It's a beautiful park. We have booked the pavilion number 1, which looks like this. It is right off the parking lot, the main parking lot off of the for this address. Make sure you use this address here because the other address is going to take you to another part of the park where there's other pavilions. You don't want to get confused, but this one definitely says number 1 on it. So all the information is right here on the website. Let's see what else.
Was that originally on a Saturday?
Yeah, we originally was going to do it on a Saturday, but we changed it to Sunday because I couldn't get the pavilion.
Okay, so it is Sunday.
It's definitely Sunday. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I couldn't get the pavilion on Saturday. It was already booked. And I didn't want to go too much later in the year because it's going to start getting too hot. Well, it's already too hot, but it'll be a lot more buggy. Be sure to bring, a sunscreen and insecticide so that you can enjoy the day. And then also we're gonna go out in the park for several hours, and then around noonish we'll meet back in here, and everybody brings some lunch. We have the pavilion from 8:30 to 5:30. I don't think everybody's going to stay that late, but we do have it that long. So it's a nice place to be able to sit, and there's numerous tables in here, and they can be spaced out. And so nice place. There are the main trail is paved with rubber. So it's really easy to walk on. It's a rubber pavement, composite pavement, but then there's other parts of it that are shell. But it's a relatively flat shell, so it's not too bad to walk on. There are a lot of boardwalks and bridges, and then there's the observation tower. If you saw this picture. Right.
But the thing is, just so people don't get the wrong idea, most of those photos that you took were not taken from the padded trail.
No, well, these 3 here are all taken. This is from the trail to the tower, which it's not that far. Most of what I went on was not the paved trail. I was on the shell trail, and the shell trail, but the paved trail I'm sure is just as lovely. So I just didn't have enough time to go over there as well. So any questions about that? Okay, Robert, do you have any announcements?
No, but I'm looking at your images and I'm going, the park should adopt some of these images for their travel brochure.
Yeah, it's I was carrying, this one was taken with a bird lens with a 500 millimeter from the tower. Yeah. So it was cool. So I was able to get this. I waited for this lady with this bright outfit on to go walking into the bridge. See, I do look for people too. Usually I don't have people with my pictures, but I do occasionally. But anyway, and then this one, the birds, it was like the Birds movie.
Mm-hmm.
The crows were all over the building. I thought, oh, that looks kind of cool. Again, turn around and look at what's behind you guys. So anyway.
Just as a point of interest for publishing your work, anytime you go to a place, you can Google tracks you on it, and you can upload your images to Google about that particular place, and they will publish your images so that people can see those locations, and they give you the credit. So it's something I do sometimes. Take the images, put them in your phone. And then when you go there, Google will say, you went to this place, would you like to share your imagery? And then you can do that and then write something about it.
Yeah, I've done like a review for Google, and you put pictures on there. Boy, you get lots of hits from that.
Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You really get some hits, and they'll tell you instantly 5,000 people just saw your image.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
there you go. It's just a thought.
Remember when we went to the Wrinkled Pickle or the Pickled Wrinkle or whatever it was in Acadia?
Yes.
Probably 10,000 hits on that one.
Right.
It was a picture of the sign.
and it's a good thing to do because if you wanted your work to be seen, there it is.
Yeah. Google.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments, any questions, anything they want to talk about? Okay, then I guess we'll go ahead and proceed with our presentation. Do you want me to go after you, Robert?
No, I want you to go ahead of me.
You go first? Okay, I'm just going to share a couple of things that are not Lightroom related. that have come up recently that I wanted to share with all you guys, because I used to do this at Genesis or at the thing that Jim did for a while, where we got online and we talked about images and stuff. So these are a couple things I think you guys might be interested. So I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm going to bring up I am going to start in Lightroom. Okay, I gotta get this out of my way. The first thing I wanted to show you was, you're not seeing all that there. Okay, here is the one I wanted to talk about. There were two things I wanted to show you tonight. One of them was Topaz Denoise AI, which is artificial intelligence. I wanted to show you what this program can actually do for you. Now, this is a picture that I took here in my yard of it's an American goldfinch. And it was somewhat dark-ish in that area of my yard. Plus it's dark plants behind it. And then I cropped the crap out of this thing. I can't get super close to these guys. I shot it with a 500mm lens. And so when you do that, you end up with all this noise that you see here. So what I was going to show you was, I'm going to edit this in Denoise AI. That's the raw image that I processed in Lightroom. Hopefully this will come up without all the zoom stuff coming on.
Is this the latest version?
This is Noise AI. And it basically, I've got it set up for automatic and auto. And if you can just, all you have to see is look at the difference. See all that noise in the background? It is unbelievable what this thing does now. This program has gotten so good so that you can, I mean, I don't even use sharpening, because this thing, it does have some sharpening in it. And so it is, I mean, this is just unbelievable what this does for an image. It's got a lot of noise in it.
Lynn, are those your particular settings, or is that the settings that come up?
I think that I might have played with the sharpness a little bit. I think that's pretty much the default settings. But, you know, you can play with them yourself and, you know, do whatever you want with it, you know, depending on the image. You know, some images have more noise in it. I've gotten to the point where I'm almost running everything through this, even if it's shot with an ISO of 100. Because they have just put it out an update for Topaz Sharpen AI, and it's like they've changed the algorithms and everything in it, and I still like this better because it does both at the same time, basically.
I heard that if you live in an apartment, these things it's imperative that you get this.
Why?
Why?
Why do you need it in an apartment?
Because the neighbors make a lot of noise.
Oh, okay. I should have known. Okay.
Thank you, Wolf.
I had a good one, Robert.
Are you really going to be here all week?
We're never going to see Van again.
Okay, so it just goes smack dab. You end it, and it goes right back into Lightroom, and there's the new one. So it's Topaz Denoise AI. Okay. The other one I wanted to show you another quick recent update. I need to open up another catalog real quick here.
After you're done with Denoise, can you send it to Photoshop instead?
Yes. Yes, you can. If you go into Photoshop to start off with, create a layer and do Denoise as a filter, and then you have it as a layer. Do Command J.
Right.
Or Option J, and it will create that other layer, and then you do the filter on top of that, and then you can manipulate it that way. The other thing I wanted to show you was Luminar AI, which is made by Skylum, which used to be MacFun. They put out the beginning or the end of last year their Luminar AI with improved sky replacement. But they kept talking about a reflection, because when you have water and you replace the sky, it's a pain in the neck because you don't have, you've got to hit the sky's got to match the water. The water's got to match the sky. And they just didn't have it ready, but they released it last week. And this was an image I took up in Georgia in the fall. And this is what I did with a sky replacement. So, I mean, you've got to change it changes the lighting. It has a lot. I'm not going to go into it because it's going to take too long. I just wanted to show it to you. Here's two more that I did where I actually changed it totally where it was kind of a cool looking morning, but I wanted to make it a little more warmer. And then,
that does a nice job.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
wait a minute. You said that it replaces the water as well?
Yes.
Okay, how does it do that?
I don't know. It's magic.
And it analyzes the whole picture, and then it looks for the reflection, and then it duplicates
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, obviously the water has got to be very smooth, and it's got to look like it's like in this particular one, it's very obvious that this is sky and sky. So it was looking for that. It doesn't do it perfectly every time. Here's an example of one where it wasn't exactly perfect. You could see some of the purple coming through down here. I think it was getting confused about where the sky was and wasn't on this picture. But it doesn't work every single time, but they have some canned skies in there that you can use, or you can add your own skies. And it's really easy to add it. You just, I actually have a folder with skies. I have a folder with backgrounds. The skies, I shoot whenever I go and I see a sky I like, I take a picture of it, and it's when I come home, I automatically put it into my sky folder. So I have skies to replace. I mean, technically, I really don't like using somebody else's sky because it's not my picture then. So I'll play with them if they're you could buy whole sets of skies if you want. But if you're out there shooting, you might as well shoot the sky yourself. And I like to use Florida skies and Florida pictures and Georgia skies and Georgia pictures, but sometimes the whole time we were in Georgia it was gray, so I didn't have any good Georgia skies, so I had to use a Florida sky. But yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that they've got this now, and I'm sure over time they'll tweak it so it works better as they get more people using it. But at least you can do that now, and in most instances it works pretty darn good.
Is that a one-time cost or they charge you monthly?
I don't think they
no, it's a one-time deal.
Lynn, is this different between Luminar 4?
You can become a member of the Topaz membership club or whatever the heck it's called. And then they shoot you all kinds of skies and all kinds of stuff to go with their programs. But yeah, that's just a one-time deal. And yeah, I think you get a one upgrade with it or something. I'm not sure. I'm a member, so I'm not familiar totally with how it is if you buy it singly, but you can buy it singly. But
I have a question about Luminar, and I was actually I just bought that this week.
Yep.
And I didn't know the difference between Luminar 4 and Luminar AI. And they're pushing the AI, but on the internet they said that Luminar 4 is more powerful, I guess. AI is their new toy.
Well, I have both, and I haven't used 4 since AI came out. So.
Good.
Well, Jim, if you live in an apartment, then get the AI.
Yeah,
I get that noise.
Yeah, AI is has all the bells and whistles basically, and 4 had a lot of good stuff in it. Yeah, I believe it. 4 has a sky replacement. It doesn't have this reflection deal, and then there's a lot of other. Basically, it's like automatic stuff in AI. Where you hit a button and it does the whole thing for you. You don't have to do anything. I mean, that's
all right.
The difference.
One more question.
Yeah.
If we use a tool like this and submit the photo to the club, is this considered augmented reality?
Yeah. If I change the sky, it's going to be altered reality. Right, Robert?
Yeah.
I mean, Jim would say if you can't tell, not really.
Right.
But if you want to be truthful, I mean, even when I put these images on the internet, on Facebook, I tell them that I replaced the sky. So, any questions?
There's always going to be some telltale, no matter how well you replace the sky.
I mean, these programs are really good at. I mean, you don't see the. This one's, it depends on the surface. This one, along the edges, you kind of see it. But on this one, well, here's a here. If you look really close, you can see it. I should have fixed those. I was doing them in a hurry, but you can't fix that. Pretty easy to fix it. But I was just doing them in a hurry, so I didn't pay too much attention to that. But yeah, I mean, it's still easier than selecting all this stuff yourself in Photoshop, guys. And Photoshop will replace the skies too, you know. So.
Is anybody familiar with Peter Lick?
Yep. The angel in the
yes
Falls guy.
Yes, we are.
Yes. Well, you know, he got dinged for putting the moon in a place that wasn't right.
Oh, really?
Yeah, big time. And remember, he is there. He is Mr. King, Mr. Perfect when it comes to saturation, large prints, and print sales. I mean, you remember, he got 1.6 million for an image.
Yeah, ridiculous.
So, but
actually, I thought it was more than that he got, but yeah.
Yeah. So, but even he got dinged for making an alteration to the image without saying it.
Yep.
And I think his place is gone in Death Valley now.
And the place in Vegas is still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting work from the guy. I give him that. But I'm saying that disclosure about an image generally will work better for you than not disclosing it.
Yep. I'm done. Go ahead, Robert.
All right. So appreciate everybody being here. Everybody knows all about Lightroom. And so we're going to run this thing a little bit from the norm. We're going to run it in the sense that it's going to be interactive, meaning that there's not a lot of new features in Lightroom, but each one of us will approach Lightroom differently than the other and end up with the results that we want, and we are quite happy with those results. Wanting to introduce you to Lightroom in a sense is not to say that it's new, because we all know it, we all work with it, but to look at some of the things, answer some of the questions that you might have about Lightroom and how we would go about doing things other than our traditional way of doing it. Meaning, and when I say our traditional way, it's meaning our personal traditional way of doing it. And oftentimes when we see something done a different way, it opens us up to trying something that we may or may not have tried before. So that's kind of where we're approaching it. I'm gonna see if I can share my screen here with everyone. And we're gonna go to, I guess, here, and I should have everyone in here. Let's go to the grid. Let's look at the grid. So let me check this. Tap the letter G. Okay, just a few images. A couple of things that you may or may not know about inside of Lightroom. And by the way, I mentioned earlier, and I just wanted to make sure that the format is so noted, is that this is a question and question session, meaning that I'm going to say to you, give you the question about how we approach this in Lightroom, and then you will answer with another question. Well, I would do this, but what do you think about that? So I'm going to give you some of those ways of seeing that's going to be a little bit odd. I know that what I'm saying here is going to be a little different, but let me set my screen up because I'm getting some stuff that I don't want to see here.
So I have a question. When you use Lightroom, do you use incandescent, fluorescent, or LCD lights?
When I use Lightroom, I don't know what you're seeing, because if you're seeing a color that's off, it's only because I'm using a computer that I'm not very familiar with as far as its color correction. Is that the reason for your question?
No, my question was meant to be really stupid and nobody got it.
That's why nobody got it.
What light bulb do you use in a light room? Incandescent, fluorescent, or LCD?
You know, Brian, you have to be in the appropriate room for your question to be answered in that sense. So if your question was stupid to start with, you're in the wrong room. Okay, Brian, I still love you, even though I just did a dig on you.
I have to disagree.
Oftentimes, when we photograph something, we make an approach. Let me go to the develop module, and we don't know where to start. In Lightroom, there is an auto start that I give people, especially when you're training. If you, let's see, I think I'm going to use the right keys. No, it's not that one. Okay. If you hold down your shift key and double click on the names of the adjustments, it will automatically adjust for you. And a couple of things that you want to make sure that you adjust that are very important are the black and white points. And why are they important? Is because they extend the range up top here out to the edge, so you get the full dynamic range of the photograph. And once you do that, then you can go in and tweak the image. For instance, I may think that this lady here, her image is a little too light for me. And once I get a base exposure, I'll come in with the radio tool, make a selection around her in that selection, and simply make an adjustment, double clicking on effect, on the part that I find to be a problem. Whenever something is too bright, my approach is going to be the highlights first. It is a smoother transition of making an adjustment over the exposure. The exposure is a hard transition, whereas the highlights is a smoother transition. Bring that down. All right, let's just say hypothetically over here, same thing is happening over in this area. Because it's bright, I will, again, double click on effects and bring the highlights down before I do anything. Again, smoother transitions. And I do this throughout. And by the way, you notice that the shadows, no matter what I do to make a ring, the shadows will come up at a point where it's already preset. Let me see if I can delete this one. Delete it. I have to do things backwards over here because I'm not used to the PC. Not to say that the PC is any worse or better. I'm just saying I just do things backwards. All right. So in order to not have that happen, anytime you open up the whatever tool you want, if you want it to start at 0, double click on effects in order to set it to 0 to start with. All right. Now I'm going to draw one over here. It's like so. Go over here, back over to my adjustments, and you notice that there is no shadows ahead. I'll come back and pull my highlights down, just in that area right there. Victoria keeps wanting to be admitted. I don't know what's going on with that. And so now I've taken each one of my settings and tweaked them to a specific look, even though I have a full gamut. Does that make sense? It does, doesn't it?
Yep.
All right, now I'll go with my pipe key, third key to the right of the letter P, in order to check to see where I am. Now, let's just say hypothetically, I make an adjustment here. Oh, sorry. I make an adjustment with the gradient tool. I come up. Oh, come on, gradient tool. Okay, gradient tool. Are you there?
It looks like it's on.
It's there now.
I mean, the square is lit up.
Yeah,
there you go.
But I get a zoom. I don't know why I'm getting a zoom. It makes no sense to me. Let me go right. As always, something has gone wrong. So let me do a G, Get back to that. Come back. What I just did is I went back to the grid. I'm going back to develop. I'll try it again. Okay, got it. I got it back now. All right. And I forgot what I was about to say. Okay, there you go. I make an adjustment. I'm coming at it from the bottom. Make an adjustment, an exposure. I'm going to lower the exposure just for the sake of argument. Lower the exposure, bring down the highlights, increase the shadows a touch, add some contrast to it, make the colors a little more, a little cooler, just so I can have the warmth at the top. Bring the clarity in, texture. I've done all of those things. Now, if I want to, if it's too intense and I want to adjust them equally up or down, there is a button here, triangle button. Are you guys familiar with this button?
No.
No.
All right, there's a triangle button here that opens and closes. And when I open and close it, the amount, I can move that amount equally back and forward so that all the sliders move all at once.
Oh, cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So there is a way of making your adjustments. Now, if I believe that if you don't want to do it that way, I think it's the if I hover over the Shift key, I believe it is, or is it the Alt key? Yeah, it's the Alt key. Alt or Option key, it does the same thing. In fact, check out the sliders over here. And if I hold down the Alt key and I move it left and right, you'll see that they will all.
Oh, okay.
You see what it's doing?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's actually is what's happening there in order to make that adjustment. So anytime you have multiple adjustments in it, or even if you have a single adjustment, I go over, double click on effects, and effects Y to reset everything. I decided I want to make this a lot warmer. I want to make the highlights a little darker. I want to make the exposure a little bit darker to go with it. And I want to give it a somewhat of a more of a red in there. Like so, by the way, equal amounts of magenta and yellow will make red. I give that whatever I've given it. I hold down my, what did I say, Alt key?
Alt.
Yeah, my Alt key. And you see how it move equally.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a thought there. All right, let's get rid of that and move on. All right, that's done. Let's go to another one, G. And let's go to a zoom factor. This is something that we've been looking at. Go to the develop module. Something we've been looking at. First of all, let me go ahead and bring down the highlights here in order to make this a little richer. There we go. Just a little bit.
Those are some long eyelashes.
Oh yeah. This was shot at a parade in Alabama, pre-COVID, obviously. And I was shooting one thing and turned around and looked, as Lynn would say, look behind you. I saw this smoke and I saw this long lashes, and I think I was shooting with a 600 millimeter lens. And I turned and captured this. And
wow.
You see that?
Uh-huh.
All right. Now, in oftentimes when we zoom in or out, we might want to determine how much of that zoom we want to have. So if I hold down the Control or Command key on a Mac, click and drag around that area like so. Now, you got a problem though. If I wanted to get out of that, I have to go back here. But here's what happens. Every time you zoom from that point forward, I put my cursor over whatever area I want to show, and guess what happens?
Yeah.
Yep.
It goes right into that area. Now, I'll have to actually reconfigure this up top by putting it at 100% and then going to fit. And next time when I go in, it comes back to 100%. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes that's what we want to do. We want to see a very specific area. And I just love the smoke that's coming out. So again, the control key on the Windows or the Alt key, and I say, I really, really enjoy that. Yes, I know it's noise, but this image has been cropped down from a huge section of a larger image in order to present this. So if you want to get rid of the noise, move to an apartment and get your Topaz AI.
A question, Robert?
I got 3 answers.
Okay, good. I'll take any of them.
Photoshop, yeah.
Yeah, and it's about the noise. Do you recommend not zooming in like that to adjust the noise?
Well, if I understand your question, if you want to know how much noise is in your image and noise is a problem with you, then by all means, get in as tight as you can in order to see what noise is available. I mean, what noise is there in order to correct it. I'm not I don't have a big problem with noise because I know when you print something, the noise is not as prominent as we see on the screen. And no one is going in to look at a photograph that closely.
Except on competition night when it's in your studio.
Well, even then, I don't count against the noise so much as I count against the image itself.
Okay.
So noise is, if you got a great image, in fact, I will challenge anyone out there to say that all of the images that have changed the way we see the world, we haven't ever checked the noise on it. Because if you look back in the film days, we shot with Tri-X, and the Tri-X was pushed. It had noise like crazy, but the image was so powerful and compelling that we ended up seeing the image more so than we saw the flaws of the image.
I understand.
So, Robert, I have a question for you.
I have 3 answers.
These tips that you're given for Lightroom, do they also work in ACR?
Yes, they do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're comfortable in ACR. So let's move on to another one. Let me see. Let's look at. All right, this is an image that was shot in the last photo outing we had, which was what? Photo camp.
Photo camp.
Yeah, it's photo camp. So this is that little valley area. Len, what do you call that area we went to?
The rock quarry.
Yes, and it was down in that little area, and I unfortunately I did not find anything of interest to me at the time. So I decided to do this Pep Ventosa thing that we're now venturing into, the alternative way of seeing things. So I did a bush in the round, meaning I made several photographs of this particular image and then merged them together. Unfortunately, I did not put together the previous images that made up this because it's on my other computer. But anyway, this is the result of merging those images together. And even though this is a very interesting deal here, one of the things that I often would like people to experiment with, I'll go back in the develop module, is the hue saturation slider and the new color grading slider. If I go to my hue saturation slider and I take my hues and I simply just grab let's see, I'm in the hue. Yeah, I'm in the hue. Make sure that I'm on the hue by selecting it. I grab my direct selection tool. And by the way, you'll know you have it when you have the crosshair. I'll simply put it hover over any particular section. And if I'm dealing with the hue, I'm saying change this particular color to another color. And there you go. And then I'll go to something else and say, okay, change that to something else. Well, actually, there's a lot of yellow in that particular one. And, oh, actually, that went too far off the page. This thing is just killing me. Okay, there we go. I hope that's enough. All right, now I'll take the saturation and say, okay, since I've changed the hue, let's change the saturation to something by simply dragging that up. And you see this image is now coming to life with color.
Mhm.
If you didn't see it. And then the luminous value, luminous again, meaning brightness and darkness. I'll simply say, okay, that blue sky up there, I want that to go a little bit darker, just in that area of the blue sky. And then overall, anytime I do any kind of color grading or anything of the sort, I will go back and readjust the contrast, exposure, and such in order to make things, in a sense, I hate to use this word, but pop. Okay, so let's take a look at where we were and where we are.
Mhm.
So the same image that's processed just simply by using some of the other avenues of what Lightroom has to offer. You all are familiar with that, I take it? Okay, I'm getting dead silence, and I don't operate that well with dead silence.
We'll wave.
We're good.
All right, now the color grading, are you guys familiar with that?
That's
No.
new.
No.
That's new.
Okay, the color grading used to be known as the split tone deal. There was split tone meaning there are two tones, highlights and shadows that it dealt with. Well, here we're dealing with three tones, highlight, midtones, and shadows. Now, if we go back to our histogram up top here, our shadows exist on the lower end, left-hand side. How do we know that? Because it says shadow right at the bottom as soon as we hover over it. If I go to that far end, if you can see my cursor with the double arrow, it says blacks in this area. If I go in this area right here, exposure, that deals with your midtones, and then your highlights, and then the whites. So you guys are all familiar with that's where the tones are distributed. So as far as the color grading, what you're saying, and let me reset this right here back. What you're saying in a color grade, in fact, let me find something else in here in order to help me. Let me see if I can pull this down a little bit. All right, back to letter G. G is going to give me something. All right, I'm going to say, hey, let's go right here. Okay. In this particular photograph, let's go to develop. I got some bright highlights, some good midtones. I don't have that much of a shadow area, but in our new color grading, we have, you might see it as something that looks like this. Midtones, shadows, and highlight, they're noted by the H, S, and M. If I hover over it, H, and that's highlights, shadows, and luminosity, those three. We obviously know what the highlights are, and we definitely know what the shadows are. And if you're not sure about what highlights and shadows are, let's go back to the basic tonal value. If I go to highlights, you'll see those areas back here. Watch them move. With very little change to the midtone area. If I go to shadows, double click on that, go to shadows. Well, there's not, as I mentioned, there's not very much, many shadows in this photograph, but that's where they exist. And if I go to exposure, in this case, exposure is the midtone. So there's a lot of pushing of this value. If you look at the histogram on the upper right, I'm pushing that value. I'm simply clicking on it and pushing that value up or down. I can also push the shadows, hover over the shadow area, push that up or down. Again, the same thing happens with the highlights and the whites. So we know we can do that. So let's go ahead and reset this back. Now, when it comes to color grading, it's divided up into those same values, color grading. And what it means is you're adding color to those different sections. And it gives you somewhat of a certain look without having to get presets. But here's the way that I tend to use this. I tend to use them separately, meaning I will go to my shadow one. And by the way, if I go here to this first gear, you're seeing all three of them all at once. But if I click on any one of these, they're divided up into a singular. So if I go to shadows, and I said, in this circle right here, within the circle, that middle of the circle represents a neutral. If I push that circle to the right, left, up, or down, I'm saturating that value, a color. I'm actually introducing a color into it, and I'm saturating it. If I want to change the color of, let's say, yellow to something else, the outside bar is a hue bar. And I can simply change whatever's yellow, change it to a different value. So I will put it over to, let's say, a blue. Whatever is blue, I'll change the blues to a different value. So I'm giving the shadows, the dark area, a certain tone. And that's really nice, because what I can do in the highlight areas, the opposite of that, I can actually give a color that's complementary to that, which is in the highlights, push that out and say, okay, I want something a little warmer. And you'll note that back in this area right here. Right now it's green. I'm gonna put that toward a magenta now. Okay, let's put it toward a magenta. That's good. And let's go to the mid-tone values and say, okay, mid-tone, please, let's go toward a, I don't know, no, I don't want a blue, something along this area right here. All right, what that's gonna do is give me a color grade. Let's see if I can tap the letter F and see what it does. That's a little different than what we have normally in our neutral. And it sort of sets your image apart. So would this be alternative? No, it's just simply being additive. And oftentimes we see it in movies and certain type of stylized television programs and we don't even think about it. Here's how we label it. I really love that particular show because I just love the lighting in it. And we say that all the time. The lighting was just so spectacular. The lighting wasn't spectacular. The color grading was. So that's what we're actually seeing, the color grading of something rather than the light.
Miami, CSI Miami, wasn't it that had that kind of coloring?
Yes.
CSI Miami, yeah.
So coloring adds an emotional value to something, whereas the absence of color adds a graphic value. It is, when we have the absence of color, we're saying it is pure. We respond to it in a neutral way. When we have certain colors in there, we respond more so in an emotional way. Let me tap the letter F again, and that brings us back. So that image will look a little differently than this image here, or the next one. Okay, so we've added a little bit of color to it. Tell me that makes some sense. If it doesn't, question me on it.
Yes, it makes sense. Can we see them side by side, before and after?
I don't know about a before and after in a side by side sense, because you're asking me to do something, but I can give you a before and after, which is going to be there and there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So again, it adds an emotional value to it. Let's go back to letter G. Let's see. Whenever you want, wait, hold up. Get something in my throat. Oftentimes, what we do when we import an image into Lightroom, one of the things that we don't do that we should do is once we import them, once an image is imported, is to do a camera calibration, lens calibration. I'm getting some feedback. I don't know where it's coming from. Do you guys hear it on your end?
Yes, we do.
I have no idea where it's coming from. But anyway, if I go to my develop module, I'll select all once I import everything. And one of the first things that I'll do is go to my lens correction. And in my lens correction, I'll click on the profile and I will select both of these. And your camera make and model will come up, but always both. Now, when you do this, you normally will see your camera's already profiles been already placed in there, but the remove chromatic aberration is not always there. So oftentimes you'll see that I will ding you on the chromatic aberration, and it is a simple check. Now, the way you do it, you notice I have all of these selected. You want to take your sync button and turn it to, before you do this, by the way, let me turn this back off, and change your sync to auto sync. When you change it to auto sync, all of the images will be done at the same time. So you notice it said it'll be updated for 8 images. Now, as soon as you do that, you want to turn auto sync back off. Now, let me tell you why. I've gone in and did some rating on like 500 images. And then I turned auto sync on in order to do something. I don't know what it was, to give it a, I believe it was to give it an 8x10 crop. So I have all of these images set up. And generally, before I send something out to the client, customer, person, whomever, I will do an auto sync, and then I will select the crop and I will send it out as an 8x10. Why do I send it out as an 8x10? If you ask that question, is because whenever they select their image in an 8x10 format, I know that I will have all of the information in case they want a 4x6 or 5x7. But if I send it out as a 4x6 and they decide, hey, you know, I really like this image, and then I want it in an 8x10, it's going to crop off an inch on either side. So the 8x10 tells me in my composition exactly that there is enough information in there to do multiple sizes. Okay, did I lose everybody? Are you snoring?
No,
No.
Makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so now all of those are set to an 8x10. Now, once that's done, again, auto sync is off. Once auto sync is off, then I'll go through individually and recompose it.
Robert, did you have to have them all highlighted, all selected to sync them all?
Yes.
Or does it sync whatever you have on that series?
Whatever is highlighted.
Okay.
It has to be highlighted first.
Yeah.
And then it just saves so much time. Now, going back to my story, is I had all these things syncing that were set to an 8x10. And then I went in and said, wait a minute, that shouldn't be rated a 5. That should be rated a 2. And I hit the rate the 2 button. And guess what? Everything in that entire 500 and some images went to a 2 rating.
Because you had auto sync on?
Yes.
Oh.
So if it's on, everything gets the same value. So remember to turn it off. But it's a great, great feature for doing a million images all at once.
Hey, Robert, I got a question on the camera calibration. Can you go back to that?
Sure. Or lens calibration. There is a camera calibration.
I'm
And
sorry,
there's
lens calibration, lens.
Okay, yes.
Now, here it says none. Now, what does that actually mean?
All right, this is a JPEG image and not the raw image.
Okay.
When you put it in a raw image, it has all the data in it. these images have been exported out and then brought back in for the purpose of me pulling something for tonight, because as I mentioned, my computer fell apart because it's a damn Mac and it's expensive as hell. And sometimes expensive Maserati ends up in the shop just like those Jaguars. So just because you own one doesn't mean that it works right all the time.
Now, Lightroom will go up and they will always add in new lens profiles, correct?
Well, as they update, that's one of the reasons why Lightroom updates so often, is because they're adding new lenses and profiles. But if you really, really are concerned about profiles and that sort of thing, get another program, and the program is called DxO Lab. They are the real serious people about matching lenses and cameras. Lightroom does an okay job, but DxO does an excellent job. Make sense?
Yes.
All right. I hope that answered whatever it is that you were asking. Okay. Let's go on to something else. Let's get off the crop tool and let's go to G. Photograph these guys, these kids. Kim does private teaching. And so these kids were out and they're outing one day and they saw me with the camera and I was there to photograph them. And they said, Miss Kim, can we go play in the water? And she said, we don't have any towels. It's okay, but can we go play in the water? And the answer was yes. And that's when I pulled out the camera and just started shooting. Broad daylight. And I love it. Anyway, let me tap letter G again, and let's go to something else. Some other feature. Do auto with the brush. Auto sync. I did that multiple. Let's see what else. Okay, one of the really big questions that I want to make sure that people understand, things that they understand. I'm going to go to this one right here. Let's go to this. Just for the sake of argument, go to that particular image. Range mask. And oftentimes we will look at in the develop module, and again, I mentioned that a lot of you guys know this, and if you do know it, chime in. Don't just sit back and just wonder about why I'm so perfect, because I am. Chime in. How many people use range mask? Don't raise your hand. Oh, okay, great. I got it now. I'm gonna draw a gradient down here like so. Is there anybody that does not use range mask? Say so out loud.
I do not.
Why?
I don't even know what it does.
Okay. And by the way, what I just drew a gradient, and you guys know that in a gradient, I have 3 lines. I don't know if you can see them. If I hover over, you see my hand tool.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, we see it.
1, 2, and 3. And in those 3 lines, I can move them separately and together. If I hold down I believe it's the Alt key. I believe that's what it is. Yeah. If I hold down the Alt key, you see how they both move. Both top and bottom will move together.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. And that's just a shortcut. And if I hover over the pen, it'll show me what's actually happening behind it. Great. And so I'm going to pull this all the way down to the bottom and then hold down my Alt key and make this a little shorter. Pull that down to the bottom again. In fact, no. Yeah, I'll do that. Now I want to make some sort of change here. And that change, let's say it's going to be cooler. Okay. So the overall area in the background is now cooler. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. In almost, in fact, all images, there is a luminance value assigned to shadows, midtones, and highlights. It's a numeric value. And once you cross a certain threshold, it no longer they're no longer shadows now, they are midtones. You cross another threshold, they're no longer midtones, they're now highlights. So one of the things that I do, in fact, I'm gonna delete this first of all, before we get started on that, is delete it. Okay, is note that when you hover over any area of the photograph, you'll see these three numbers that appear, RGB. And you see those numbers?
Yes.
And those numbers are giving you value of whatever it is you're hovering over. So right now, the value of this and the high value is 88 to 90, 88, 89, 90. Down here on the shirt, the value is 42, 57 and 60 at the most. And that's saying that there's 60 units of blue, and which means this is obviously more blue than it is red or green. And I go down at the bottom and I go, wait a minute, that's 85 again. So if I look at tonal or luminous, those are luminous values, or luminous meaning brightness values, I can isolate what I want to happen, any adjustment to the luminous value. And that works like this. I'm going to draw another gradient, but I'm going to start it at the bottom. Drag it down. All right. So now if I hover over the center Q, it's affecting everything above it. So we all agree on that. Somebody say amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, all right. Now, if I make an adjustment to that, let's say we go back to that blue thing. Everything is blue. Well, let's make it magenta. Yeah. We're gonna make that value magenta. Double click on the temp. Let's make it green. Now we got green in there. So I'm gonna make it, all right, there you go. I'm gonna make it these colors right here. That's it. And I say to you, even though we have blue in here, I'm gonna say to it, hey, look, I only want values in the 80s range. I have a value of 0 on the left-hand side of a range. And you'll see it right here, 0 to 100. 100 on the other end of the range. If I move, forgive me, I gotta drink some more. If I move the range and say, exclude anything that has, and look at the number now, 14, anything below 14 don't affect. Anything that's below 45, 48 don't affect. And our numbers were around 80, right?
Yes.
And let's go down to about 80. Okay. So our people are just the way they were. However, if I go up to my slider here, it's only affecting the water. If I make my exposure, you see that?
Yeah.
It's affecting just the water. And that's a great way of controlling certain areas of your photograph that you want to adjust over others.
For example, maybe a sky behind a tree. You don't want to turn the tree blue. You want to just do the sky, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Let's double click on this, and I'm going to actually put the exposure back, and I'm going to say, hey, look, here's what I want to do. I don't want to deal in luminous anymore. So I'm going to reset the range back to 0. I only want to deal in color. And what I want to happen, even though I still have my gradient down here, the gradient is still in place, I want to isolate color to just this blue. Now when I do something, even though I have a gradient, anything that's got blue in it, that form of blue in it is going to be affected. If it doesn't have blue in it, that form of blue in it, it will be affected less. Now you said to me, wait a minute, Robert, the whole thing just went down. There's a flaw in your deal. Well, there's an amount slider right here that tells me how specific do I want to be. Oh, that I want to be very specific, or I want to be very general. So remember that blue? We brought the exposure down. You see where it's happening?
Yeah.
And again, I want to be very specific. And as you see, as I move that blue left or right, it gets very specific. But okay, you said to me, hey, look, dude, that's not a good example. It is if I do this. And so there's the specifics of it. Oh, wait a minute, I must have put something else in there. I must have, so let me go ahead and reset that, because it's making me look bad. All right, I got that one, and I want to make that more green. Anything that has that value in it. And obviously some of these things in the background have that same value of this particular green. Make sense?
Yes.
Robert, can I ask a quick question?
You're a grown person. In fact, you're over 21.
Yeah. So this is something where we could take, let's say we wanted to make everything but the little guy just black and white, but we could keep his color, but we could make everything else black and white. I know it's something that I used to do a lot with Picasa, but we don't have that. I don't have Picasa anymore. And of course, Lightroom is what I use all the time, but I've never been able to really master that part of it. So this is where I would do this, if that's what I want.
No, this is not where you would do that. No.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and double click on effects in order to reset everything. And I'll show you exactly how to do that. In fact, I'm going to delete this pen right here now that you brought it up. And by the way, you'll see this target eyedropper. It'll stay there until you put everything back. One of the things I don't like about Lightroom is acting like my mother. It's like, put the stuff back when you finish. So now I have to put it back. And then now I can actually do something. I just hate that. I was like, okay, delete. All right. The way you want to do that is by taking a brush, and in your brush, you want to, actually you're going to go down here at the bottom where your HSL is. Okay, HSL, you see that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I hear you. Okay, I can't see you because I have a full screen over here, but you want to take everything to the negative.
Okay.
Everything. And everything then to the negative. Wait a minute, I'm at luminous. Okay, I'm wrong. It shouldn't be luminous. I'm gonna reset that. I said luminous. It's saturation.
Okay.
Take saturation, everything to the negative. Everything. All of them. Every last one of them. The entire group. Do not discriminate. Just because you like blue, keep it. All right, now everything is now a monotone.
Okay.
Desaturation means lack of color. So we have monotone. We're good?
Yep.
We see that?
I see it.
All right, I take a brush. Here's my brush. Simple brush. And by the way, I'm going to go to my brush up top here. And I'm going to make sure effects, double click on effects, and everything is the way it needs to be. I'm going to make sure that in this case, my feather and flow are at 100%. It doesn't have to be. I generally like to work with a flow of about 50%. But in this case, I am going to make sure that auto mask is turned off. And I'm simply going to go up, and you see saturation?
Okay.
I'm going to push that back to the top. 100%. You see that?
Okay.
And then I'm just simply going to go in and paint Dude Man back in.
Okay.
Who is this asking?
It's Van, our visitor.
Our visitor?
Yeah.
Tell me your name again.
Van.
Van. You know my name?
It's Robert, right?
Right. Make sure you don't forget it.
I won't forget it. I've heard your name. I've heard your name many times over the last few years from Leon. So
I have just impressed you.
And Robert,
I know it, and it's probably something simple that everybody could do, but I've just not been able to figure it out with. I had it mastered with Picasa, but I have not been able to figure it out with Lightroom.
You got way more control right here. Is that what you want?
That's it. That's it.
And does that look good?
It does.
And if you see my picture, you say that looks good too. All right. So that I'm glad you asked that question, because oftentimes people want to know how to do that sort of thing. And now I'll tell you this, once I've done this particular portion of it, I'll give it at the end of it, I'll give it go ahead and get out of my brush tool, go back down to my my color grading. Where is it? Color grading. And instead of dealing with just the midtones, there's this global deal right here, which means global means that whatever I do is going to happen to the entire image. That's all it means. And I will give this whole thing a nice sort of warm feeling. And you see the black and white still stays black and white, but the overall feeling of it can be a different color.
Yeah.
See that?
Okay. Yep.
Now it gets a little warmer, a little in the background, so it's not so stark. So that's color grading, along with isolating the color. When you isolate a color, it sort of look sort of gimmicky, in a sense. But when you add a little bit of that grading in the background, it brings it to a modern day feel, a look. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Very good. I'm glad you guys are with me. I'm glad you're staying. Let's take a look at the tone curve. Go back to G, and let's look at something else here. Tone curve. We don't use the. I'm sorry. Did I hear something other than myself? The tone curve. What is the tone curve, and why is it we use it, or why should we use it, or why shouldn't we use it? Well, tone curve. Oftentimes we love the sliders in our basic panel. We love it. It's easy to deal with.
Complete impracticality of having such long nails. It makes doing most things very difficult.
Somebody's got to mute. We got background noise.
I got it. It's done.
Oh, I was wondering about that. It's like, wait a minute, long nails?
It was Leslie. She's on the phone, evidently.
Talking about long nails. Okay, I'm looking for the long nails in this photograph. Okay, so oftentimes it's very easy to do our highlights. Let's see, shift key. Do our highlights and shadows and all of those things in order to bring something in line. But if you ever work in Photoshop in the more advanced ways of doing things, you'll have something known as the tone curve. And in that tone curve, it's a matter of moving the shadow area, which is down in this area, and the highlights in that area up or down. So I can take the shadows and make them a little richer. I can take the highlights by setting a point, by clicking on it and moving it a little higher. And I've created a little bit of contrast right there without doing very much of anything. I can also flatten the image, the area out in the dark areas, and then reduce the highlights as well to give it more of a flat look. So you can do this inside the tone curve. And so then one of the reasons why you would want to use it is that your highlights have run out. You're like, hey, I've lowered them as much as I can. And exposure is I still don't have enough information in there. So I can come into my tone curve. And by the way, let me get rid of that. Delete control point. I just simply right clicked on it and delete that control point. And I can then take the whole image and pull it down in the center, give it a certain mood. Inside of your tone curve, you have RGB, red, green, and blue channels. I can come into the red channel. In this case, well, actually, let's make it a blue channel. And in that blue channel, you notice there's a blue color there that lets you know which channel you're in. And I can simply add more yellow or more blue to the scene. I can take the green, do the same thing, your green channel. If I go down here, I add more magenta to it or add more green. In this case, I'm gonna add a little bit magenta to it. Just a touch. So there are all kinds of things I can do with a tone curve simply by controlling the midtones, the shadows, and the highlights. Now, I didn't say it was going to be pretty. I just said I could do it. And right now, this has a more of a greenish wash to it. And oftentimes what I'll do, even though something has a greenish wash, I'll come in with a brush tool and I'll take the green from here, set my brush up, and go in and simply make it more green in order to give it some emphasis. Now, you notice what I just did? I just painted 100%. I can come back in, even though I'm still in the same brush, and lower the flow, because you don't ever want anything to be at 100% throughout. Lower the flow to around, I don't know, around 25%, and I'll start painting this area right up here, back and forth, to give it just a little bit of a wash. And that sort of enhances your image without anybody realizing that it is painted. And then I'll say, okay, great. I'll do a new brush, brand new one, Where is it? Oh, right here. I'll do a new brush, double click on effects in order to reset everything. Take the saturation, find it over here. Saturation, move it down to, let's say minus about 80%. Take my flow, and this is how I cheat, by the way. Take my flow, and I'll paint this. So wait a minute. Okay, in this case, I'll turn on auto mask. Paint my flow like whatever. All right, I'm taking the color out of it. You guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'll turn around and say, okay, what color do I want it to be? I'll say I want it to be, okay, where am I? Oh, there it is. I want it to be yellow. And I want it to be a dark yellow. Well, how do I get it to be a dark yellow? In order to make something dark, we lower the exposure. Is that how we do it? And let me go ahead and paint this section right there. Paint over here. And there is my dark yellow. And I can add some more yellow back into it. Yes, you just saw me change the color.
That's cool. Yeah.
And it does not look, given a little bit more attention and time to it, it does not look fake. Yeah, I know, I'm patting myself on the back. But at the same time, I come back. You remember I painted this wall right here?
Yep.
Remember that?
Yep.
I go back to that pen and decide, wait a minute. What I did to that wall was, what did I do to it? I gave it a green there. Okay, great. But what happens if I come in and I desaturate that color? Again, I'm desaturating first. Where's the saturation?
Down, right there.
Okay, there you go. It's at 100%. I desaturate it. And let's go ahead and finish painting in the wall like we had it painted in. And now it's a neutral. And I decided I want that wall to be a color. And I want it to be a bluish color. There you go. Simple, easy peasy, right? You guys all knew that. Is that right?
No.
Okay, great. I just need, my ego is so fragile.
I knew it about 2 seconds ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Robert, how does the hues, that colorful hue slider work right there?
Okay. Hue is simply nothing more than changing one color, changing something from one color to another. Now, you don't see any changes right here. Why? Because it's being controlled by this color right here. That color is a dominant color, and because we've desaturated everything. If we brought back the saturation to something back to a, neutral, then this should work.
Yep.
There you go. So because we desaturated it, it's not going to work. But here, I can take that color and make it any color I want.
How do we change Howard hues?
Howard hues? How do we change Howard hues?
I'm losing. I'm doing bad tonight. Disregard. Yeah.
Brian, I'm going to mute Brian.
Brian, it's no secret that this is a common occurrence of yours. It's not just tonight. Brian, as always, I love you.
Yes.
I'm kidding, Brian. I don't love you.
Robert, it's 8:32. Just so
okay. All right. We're just about to wrap up.
Okay.
We're almost there. So, Lightroom. There's one other thing I wanted to point out. All right. So we've done that one, and let's go to one. Let me tap to get out of this and go to something that's rarely used. G. Go to G, and I'm gonna go to. Let's go to here. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, good. This is an image. Does anyone ever use this, let's go to develop. Down here to calibration. Does anyone ever use that? Yay, nay?
I've seen more people use it than I have in the past.
Oh, okay. Sometimes when you want to deal with color, it's good to go down and play around with these things. And when I say play around with them, you are going to get, it's a way of adding color in a subtle, very subtle way. You see that skin tone?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Watch what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So you're taking and putting in more blue?
Actually, I'm desaturating the blue that's in it. And it's a subtle, it doesn't necessarily work on the blue, it works on the opposite value, red and yellow. That's what it works on. So now I'll go to, let's say I go to, now if you look at his glasses right here, see that?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of yellow in the skin. So look at what's happening. It's a subtle way of controlling a saturation or a look that's more gradual in its color application or applying it than you would if you were to go to the regular hue and saturation. So I just want you to know that if you ever want to deal with color in its form of another way of color grading or another way of adding a look, then this is one of the ways of doing it.
What is that coloring that's on his glasses?
The reflection,
Oh.
reflection of the highlights from the flash unit.
Would you want to take that highlight out?
No. No. Sometimes certain forms of imperfection gives reality to an image, meaning that their glasses do have reflections in them. When I used to work for Macy's, in order to show something that had a glass, you had to put reflections in it. Otherwise, you wouldn't know it was glass. If I take this particular, let's go away from here, just on that question alone, and I double click on effects in order to reset everything, and I add a bunch of contrast and let's say a little bit of dehaze, and I do it to this glass right here. It gets to a point where it does not look like it's glass anymore. It's the haze of it that gives you the idea that something is glass, the smokiness of it. So generally what you'll do in this point is you'll hold down your Alt key, which turns it into a negative, and then you'll subtract it from the eyes, whatever it was. Actually, I did it wrong. Let me paint it back. That part will be clear. The other part will be Alt key and make it bigger, and you subtract it. And you leave the smokiness around that portion. But as far as the eyes themselves, you'll take away the haze from it. And that's your illusion right there. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, I bored the hell out of everybody. So I got one more thing to deal with right here. Let me see, checking my notes. Okay, there's one more thing here. And that's gonna be, how many of you guys dodge and burn?
Not good at it.
Not good at it. Okay. All right, let me do dodging and burning. Let's do dodging and burning. You know what dodging and burning is?
Lightning and darkening.
And the reason why you do a dodge and or burn is to create depth. That is the main reason, to show depth. Right now, this image is somewhat flat. Why? Because this value and this value and this value over here on the left-hand side are pretty much very similar values. If we go to develop module, yeah, they're very similar. So what we want to do is we want to create depth. So you take a brush, double click on effects, and I will simply darken, bring the exposure down, and add a little bit of contrast into it. And just this little portion in the back here, just that little portion, not everything, just that portion. And immediately that looks a little bit further back than before. And then because it's dark, what I'll do in the foreground is I only deal with the dark areas, not the light areas, but the dark areas, and I'll make them a dark as well. And then the light areas, I'll get a new brush, take the opposite approach, double click on effects, come on, and bring the exposure up and the highlights up. And then I'll paint in this area. All right. And then I'll close it off because you have light against dark. You have light. Let's make this dark. just where they meet.
You didn't double click.
I am about now. And then, because the dress is so bright, we'll take that value down. Double click on effects in order to reset everything. Come on, reset. All right. And bring the highlights down. That's all we want to do. We got a new brush, did we not? Yeah, we got a new brush. And simply bring the highlights down just a bit in certain key areas. Sorry. And a little bit more across the top here. Just a little bit right across the top. And then we're going to do one more brush, new brush. And no, actually, we're going to do a radial. We're going to do a radial right here. If we can get that in there and bring that value down just a little bit, that's great. And then we're going to close it off with we're going to close it off with a radial in order to put it all together. And that's going to be, and I always say, okay, take your radial in the direction of light. The direction of light is from here downward. So I'll turn this in that direction, like so. Pull this over. Make sure that one of these edges go off the page. And then I will invert or do the outside, double click on effects, and I'll close it off by going and then warming that side up.
Why do you make sure one of the edges goes off the page?
Because I don't want it evenly around. When it's even, we know that it's a vignette. When it's uneven, it looks like light. All right, I'm gonna show you what was and what is. Flat.
Wow.
Depth.
Wow.
Flat.
I have a question about the radial. How do you keep it to stay on invert? Is there a way to set it so it stays on invert all the time?
It's on invert.
Mine doesn't stay on invert. I have to tell it to go invert every time on the radio.
If I click on the radio and I do nothing to this except double click on effect and then put in there, where is it? Down further. Invert. Let's say I take this off. I put it in there. Invert. If I close it off, turn it back on, invert will be there.
Okay.
Whatever you reset it to and then apply your changes, meaning, okay, let's say I don't want it on invert. I want it on something else. And I want it to start off with the exposure down. All right, it's all the way down. I get off of it. I go do something else. I come back to it. Guess where it is? Exposure all the way down. Invert is off.
Okay.
Now, Robert, you said on the tool, the radio tool, you always do it with light.
Well, no, I close it off with light. I mean, I close it off so that it points toward the light.
Okay, so can you click? All right, so you want the radio tool to be pointing towards the light. Is that like always or just for this particular picture?
No, that's generally always. That gives your image a direction of light. So you remember we brought this value up over here?
Right.
And so that's saying that that's our key light, even though we have another light that's lighting our person. But by darkening everything around it, we maintain this light. So it gives the appearance that that light is coming from there. It's all an illusion.
Right.
Robert, how often do you use the brush tool when you're using the radial or the gradient tool?
Say again, how often do I use the brush tool?
Yeah, the brush. No, the brush inside the gradient.
Oh, the brush inside the gradient tool.
Yeah, or the radial tool.
Yeah, you can use the brush inside of it if I was to take this and I said, okay, I don't want it to have an effect in this upper area right here. Well, there is a brush inside there, and that brush, once I choose it inside this radio tool, if I hold down the Alt key, it will turn to a minus and it'll subtract. And so now I've subtracted that portion from it. So yes, I do that a lot, except I mostly use range mask now. I'll find out what that value is, and then I'll say, okay, I want it to subtract from that value. But yes, the brush tool. Now, while we're here, let me say Control Z. I'll put that back. And I would just point out one other thing about the brush tool. I'm going to go into the brush tool, and this light that's coming from back here in the background, you guys have seen me do this before. What I'll do is, let me double click on effects in order to reset everything. I don't need auto mask on at all. What I'll do is, especially in an area like this, I'll make the brush size about the size of the light. And I'll click one time to establish. And then I'll come across to the other side to make the brush bigger, hold down the Shift key, and then click. Now, when my exposure comes into play, and then I'll take the Alt key and subtract it, make it bigger, and subtract it from this area right here. So what do you have? You have that beam of light coming across. And then I'll do the same thing again with a new brush. And I'll start it smaller brush because it's coming from the top. I'll click one time, establish, and I'll make it bigger. At the end, hold down the Shift key before I click and click one time. If I go over to this, you'll see exactly what it's doing. And then I'll just simply bring my exposure up. And again, hold down the Alt key or the Option key and subtracting it just a little bit from that top piece. And we have given this shot lots and lots and lots of depth from where it was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is what I want you to know about some of the tools that you have and some of the options that you have with those tools and how creative you can be inside of Lightroom without having to go to Photoshop. So there you have it, folks.
Very good. Excellent.
Yes.
Robert, we didn't talk about the map.
Oh, I know. We're gonna have to get to that at a different time. But let me just give you a sort of an overview. Is that let's see, the letter F is that whenever you go on a shoot, shoot with your cell phone, the location, and then when you import that shot into Lightroom. From Lightroom, you're gonna go to the map thing, and thank you so much, Lynn, for telling me about that. When you go to the map deal, whenever you import something from your cell phone, it'll ask you about geo encoding. And in that geo encoding, it will automatically on the map tell you exactly where that shot was made. Now, one of the things that I will do sometimes is I will shoot something up at a location and I'll shoot with my cell phone. I'm not going to shoot the job or anything. It's so that I can come back to it. And I'll import that into Lightroom, import the shot from my cell phone into Lightroom, and then it will then point out on the map where I am. And from that, I'll put in my keywords, the metadata in there on that particular shot. And it'll show me exactly where it was. So in the metadata portion of the library on the right-hand side, I'll say, hey, look, I shot this. And it'll show me exactly what it was. I say, I shot this as a scout. Scout means to look for, look out, to go back. Scouting, the something river and birds. That's what I saw there. So I'll put that in the metadata so that when I come back to that shot, it'll give me an indication of what it is that I did.
Robert, can you sync that to all the shots of that shoot?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes, you can. But we'll discuss that at a different time. I apologize for going over on my prescribed time that Lynn gave me. She's the whip master, and you know how much I like whips.
It's all her
Oh,
fault.
hey, take lots of pictures.
I just don't want anybody following, we want to go to bed early so we can get up early in the morning and go shoot and then try techniques.
So, yes. So let me stop sharing my screen for just a moment here and get back with everybody.
Good question, Robert.
Thank you very much, Robert.
Yeah.
Adding those light rays, is there some way to also add like dust particles that you would normally have if it were actual?
Yeah, you pick up a bunch of sand and shoot it in front of your camera. In fact, you can open your camera back and then throw some dust in there.
Yeah.
It works just as well.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Now, when you're talking about getting finite and all that kind of stuff, you're going to have to go to Photoshop for that. And what I just said was not necessarily out of the ordinary. What I mean by that is as you photograph clouds and in photographing clouds, you photograph dirt and dust the same way. Take up sand and kick it up and then photograph it. And then that becomes a what do you call this thing? Stock image for you. So you need to put dust and or clouds in. I mean, yeah, dust and steam and all that kind of stuff in it. It's not a hard thing to do in Photoshop.
Thank you. I need that.
Yeah, I did it with a shot with Lee, and that the same thing of we did at that photo camp last. Had Lee kick up a bunch of dirt in order to kick a pine cone. Actually, is what it was, and I had him do it several times. So I merged in certain kicks of dust into composite on top of another shot. I'll show you that shot next week next time we meet it about him kicking, and it happens to be about 6 or 7 shots put together to look like one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Robert? You're supposed to bring your Lightroom questions. We have a few more minutes before we all go to sleep.
I just wanted to say I really like that image of that woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's thank you. I want to say all of this whole thing, this whole presentation was to impress Van.
Well, I was impressed. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, and Wayne is happy now that I didn't call on him again. He's all happy. But just overall, I know I give a lot of these presentations, and I know I can get a little old and all that kind of stuff, but I really do appreciate you guys hanging with me on this one.
Are you old enough for your shot yet?
I get my shot, my second shot next week.
All right.
On Monday, it goes down to 40.
Yep.
Yeah. What it is that if you have a pre-existing condition and you're 39 and you bribe your doctor.
But we all know you're not 39.
But it doesn't mean that I didn't bribe my doctor.
That may be,
what if my
have to, because you're old enough to get it just anyway.
What if my pre-existing condition is a problem with Lightroom?
Well, I can help you with that. I can help you with that. I can give you a pass on that one.
Dr. Roberts.
There you go.
Hey, Robert, thank you very much.
That was great.
Yeah,
Thank you,
great.
Robert.
Thank you.
It is recorded, right? So we can play it back with Lightroom up so we can.
Yeah, it should be on the website probably later tonight.
Good.
Thank you very much, Robert.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Outstanding.
You're so welcome.
And Robert, the range mask, that's almost a class in itself because that can be very confusing.
I use it a lot, and one of the things I do want to do a class on, it's called Blend If, and that's inside of Photoshop. It's a little more complicated, but it's way more powerful than the range mask. But it's the same concept.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Chuck.
Night.